James and Christina Lennox from Brownstone.
All right, so I shouldn't have to be the first person to tell you that homelessness is an issue in San Francisco, but it's also a costly issue. And that's one of the reasons it hasn't been solved. The current methods that we're using are ending up costing about $50,000 per person per year just for shelter. If you just look at the budget that the city allocates towards our current beds. So obviously that's not sustainable. It would cost 225 million a year to get the rest, and then of course it's a growing problem. So we really need something scalable, fast, and cost-effective to deal with homelessness. And the challenge also, aside from the money, is everyone is scattered doing their own thing. There doesn't seem to be a concentrated effort to end this problem. And there's no real solutions around this part either. And then, of course, what we see, the result of those challenges is there's too many people coming into homelessness to fix it. That's why you see a large amount of homeless people unhoused on the street, and the cities, at the same time, they're adding shelters, but it's not fast enough to keep up with preventing people from ending up in these encampments and communities out on the street rather than getting the services that they need. So we're going to go through exercise here.
We're going to do an exercise. We're going to invite you all to close your eyes for a moment. And I'm going to start off. And then what I'd like for you to do, if you'd like to join me in this exercise and you have something to add, raise your hand and we'll run a mic to you. We are recording this, so we'd appreciate it if you would wait for a microphone. So close your eyes for a moment and settle in. And imagine a world where everyone has enough.
A world where street homelessness no longer exists.
A world where everyone has a place to go at night.
Who would like to join me in this vision? Raise your hand.
A world where I see everyone's happy, there's peace, there's room for people to express themselves creatively, they're not in jobs that they don't like, and everyone has opportunity.
Anyone else have something to add? Nikita?
A world where every time someone says help, the helping hand is there.
Beautiful. Anyone have anything else to add?
A world where faith and families are strong.
I say the only time we look down and see them picking them up off the ground, carrying them.
A world where the helped person becomes the helper.
A place where people's hearts are healed.
Place where everyone has a strong spiritual core that supports them through their recovery and to a positive impact on society.
I think one of the things that is difficult for homeless people is just always giving them stuff, but the best thing to do is give them jobs so they can earn money and buy things and they can solve their problem. And also to stop
So imagine a world where
there is jobs for people that can earn money and they can do what they need to do to live their life. And
be
also,
self-reliant.
also you need to have people to stand up and say, don't create homelessness by opening their borders and letting people in. And just
So
all that
imagine a
stuff.
world where people have agency, freedom and agency and money.
Imagine a world where you spent less on propaganda and less on publicity than you did on the homeless problem itself. I mean, if you do the stats, 63 cents of every dollar donated goes to commercials. It does not go to the homeless problem.
Okay, let's follow the pattern. Imagine a world where
Everyone has purpose and are excited to wake up each morning.
beautiful. Thank you very much for participating. Oh, John Knox had one more thing to add. Let's put the cherry on the top of this
Yeah.
beautiful vision.
Imagine a world where across any political divide, the thing that unites us is our love for our common humanity, and that everybody has dignity and that love that we can share with each other.
Beautiful.
Imagine a world everyone has easy access to medical care.
No. I appreciated what he had to say. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to share their vision. Okay, let's recenter for a second. Let's take a deep breath. Let's imagine a world where we can lead with love and heal and live in beautiful harmony. So, with that, I'd like to pass it on to Christina and James.
Yeah. So, what we do in our day jobs is we came out of our own housing struggles when we were trying to graduate from college and trying to move up in the world and get a job. We both experienced housing insecurity, where you don't have a place to live and the existing housing supply doesn't meet your needs. I could not provide a security deposit first month's rent, last month's rent. So it was a matter of either being able to start a job and finish college or just staying at home on my mom's couch in not a great place with many opportunities. So that's why we started Brownstone Shared Housing. And what we do is we put these sleeping pods that we designed in homes, and more people are able to share a home without everyone needing their own room. You can still have privacy and sleep more people to a room. And what that does is it makes the price of rent a fraction of what it typically costs. And we don't do security deposits and all of those barriers, basically allowing people to come here for an opportunity without all of the upfront costs that exclude most of the population. And what we're here today to talk about is how we can take what we've learned in our for-profit side and use that same model to rapidly create more shelter for unhoused people and people who are living on the street in a way that's just as economical as what we do on the for-profit side, and also as fast and scalable and flexible. So we've been doing this for a while. We've had a house in Palo Alto for 3 years. Paul mentioned we converted a bank downtown into housing for 30 people. We recently finally got the planning department to admit that there's nothing illegal about that. But they just have to submit a paper. But that experience also has educated us about what is possible and what it takes. Basically, the past year of talking with the city has both educated the city as well as us in terms of how to get something like this through, because they really are used to really heavy-handed demolish a building, build a new tower type of projects in San Francisco. And we're on a mission to end the same problem that we started this company for. And we've actually seen great results. Just very quickly, this guy, Jackson, he came to our house randomly in October and said he needed a place to stay. He actually came before we had even signed the lease. He was at the door. And I thought it was strange, but I showed him around, and then he eventually paid and signed the lease. But it turns out he's not even an entrepreneur. He's just a student from Australia who found this company here based in San Francisco, building a project that he was very, very passionate about in AI. And he just hopped on a plane. He was willing to do anything to get here. He didn't have housing. He didn't know anyone, but he saw a tweet about our house and he just showed up. And on his blog, he tells his story about how he came here and he did whatever it took to find people and network and find the company that he wanted to work for. And he ended up getting a job and his own apartment in San Francisco, and he's well on his journey with his dream job. And so that's basically what we want to do. Obviously, not everyone's going to work in AI. That's what we want to do for people. We want to equalize access to opportunity, and a big part of that is having a place to go.
All right. So, as you saw, James introduced our for profit side of our company, and Brownstone X, as we're calling it, is our nonprofit side of the company where we give back to people. And the X, if you're wondering, it stands for collaboration. So, this is our concept. We plan to add our pods that we design, these are the pods inside of the building, to a large open space and essentially create a transitional shelter where we can house the homeless and provide services for them. And we have things like common spaces, kitchens, things that they need, bathrooms, storage facilities, and essentially what we would be doing, what it would look like, is we would take somebody from the street, the outreach section right there on the bottom, and they would come to the facility and we would get them set up with a place to stay within 2 hours. That's our goal. 2 hours from the entrance of the door to finding a bed. And so what they do is they would go to a counter where they would be assessed for mental health and their needs, like what do they need with their house. And then that person will triage them and determine where they need to go within this big building. We're imagining a massive building with lots of different nodes that have essentially services for each of those nodes. And then from there, they get their bed, and then they're placed into care, whatever care they might need. And actually, at the end of this session, we're going to be imagining what that care looks like, and we'll be doing a Q&A and discussion session. So we're kind of just proposing this idea to you guys right now. And then, yeah, from there, they start their workforce development. They get their house, they get back on their feet. And in normal cases, we expect them to be in our transitional shelter within 6 months to 1 year. But in extreme cases, they might be there for, like, let's say 1 to 2 years. Or in the most positive extreme cases, it would be a few days to a few months. And so down here on the bottom, you'll see that we have a lot of different service providers. So, for example, we have the Lao Family Salvation Army, YWAM SF, City Build, and so there's a lot of these different service providers that are already providing services that have resources to come into the shelter and set up shop essentially and start taking people. So these are our next steps. This is a high level overview where we first need to find the empty building. So we need enough room for 4,500 people at the max. We're estimating 500 to 4,500 people. We'll determine that later, and that's what you guys are here for. And so yeah, we got to secure the empty building. We have to set up the furniture, so either tear down what exists inside of the building and then set up the pods and the lockers and all of that. And next, then we partner with operators, and we actually expect to do step 2 and step 3 concurrently. So as we're setting up furniture, we're partnering with operators, securing deals, and then last we start to connect people to the shelter. We expect either people from the community or police officers to hold somebody's hand and walk them to the shelter. It will be something like a resource where people can, if they see somebody sleeping on the street and they look like they need help, we can just hold their hand and walk them to the building where everybody will know in the city what that looks like and where that is. So, in the most ideal scenario, this is like our very hopeful scenario, and we're dreamers. So, um, right now and in the coming months, we plan to secure the building. So, we need a team to do that with us. Secure the building, and then by 2025, we want to start operating that. And this is a temporary solution too. So that building is not going to be there for who knows when. We're going to sign a lease for about 5 years and see how it goes. And then 2030, we revisit that. So this is our opportunity. As you guys might know, the X building is now vacant and it has 800,000 square feet. So yeah, it's a big building. And as you guys know, you can probably start to see the plans coming through. So there's enough room for 5,330 people. And Elon he recently signed his lease. So his lease is actually up in 2029. So these are the existing photos of the building. This is how it looks right now. So yeah, this is just a little snapshot of the building. It's a Class A building. So that means that it's all set up it has all the bells and whistles. It looks very nice. It lends very well to human development. This is an example of one of the many suites that is in this building. So as you can see here, there's 5 different open areas. And in those open areas, we would be putting our pods there and then having a few common spaces around them. And then also there'd be shared kitchens, shared bathrooms, and the like.
Yeah, so one of the things that I want to highlight, so Christina mentioned that we're dreamers, and we definitely are, but we're also very serious people who do things. So we've actually done something like this. We saw a bank and we said people can live there, and now people are living there, and you see success stories like Jackson. Like, this is very real. There's nothing stopping it other than, of course, will and resources. That's the main thing. So we just want to show that it's not a zoning issue. It just has to comply with the building code, which is mostly around safety. And homeless shelters are actually explicitly allowed in all of downtown, but you don't see as many as there could be. As far as why now, there's a lot of urgency with homelessness currently. You might have heard of Governor Newsom's order basically telling cities to either clear these encampments or lose funding. But the issue still is there's nowhere to go. And so while Marin might be able to push everyone out of the city, where are they going to go? Maybe San Francisco. And San Francisco, we've already seen with encampment cleanups, you're effectively just harassing people to some extent because they're just going to return to the same area, just a little poorer without some of their possessions. So we really do need a place to go. Maybe not for everyone, which is what the Supreme Court decided, that you don't need to have space for everyone before you can clear an encampment. But we do need space to see a reduction in the amount of people on the street. So unfortunately, this isn't going to be free. The pods are very real. They're made of steel and composite wood, and then of course it takes labor to make them. But we can control that slightly where we're not charging what we would charge for a normal pod, and we can find different ways to optimize it further for this purpose. But for now, these are the numbers that we set up. The biggest costs are going to be around the building, as you'd imagine. So that's both a barrier and an opportunity because that opens the door to philanthropy. If someone does own a building and is willing to lower that cost, then that would have a material effect. But regardless, the overall startup and ongoing costs of this are a lot cheaper than that 225 million that you saw. So yeah.
So yes, we will need your help. We need help securing the building. So if you have any connections to the landowners of the X building, or if you know somebody who's connected to the corporate X or Twitter company, as you know, we would like to get a team together that can start to problem solve and start to talk to the necessary players in this.
And I also want to point out that this idea is for this building, but it's malleable and adaptable to pretty much any empty building, depending on the size that we need it. Or you could just do 3 floors of it if you're not doing every space for everyone. So if you might not know who owns the X building, but you might know someone who owns an empty building down the street.
Exactly. So we're also going to need people to get agreements with state and local agencies and to secure grants. And yeah, if anybody has experience with that, I see Kate there. We would love to have you. So the next steps for you is that you can sign up on our website. And also, if you scan this QR code, it will bring you to the entire website where you can poke around, see a video walkthrough of the concept. It's all fun and pretty and everything, so you can start imagining what that might look like. And you can also, while signing up on our type form, it's a link on the website, you will also be notified of an open house that we're going to have. And yes, where you can check out the bank building that we've been talking about. You can touch and feel the pods. You can lay in one if you want to. Yeah, it's a big building, 5,500 square feet. You can see 30 pods in that whole space and start to wrap your mind around exactly what this might look like.
Thank you so much. Let's give James and Christina a big round of applause. This is a big idea. This is a big disruptive idea, but that's what it's going to take to solve this problem. So we really want to open your minds to the possibilities, because this could be a possibility, right? And so we have an incredible showing of people here today, probably our biggest group so far. And we want to do a little bit of workshopping. Are you guys all on board with that? Okay, so this is a very large group, and what I would like for you to do is I'm going to invite you to do this on your own so that I don't have to. Organize yourselves into groups of about 6 to 8 people. And before you do that, I'm going to can I trust you guys to do that on your own? Yeah, and we'll take, maybe in less than 5 minutes if you could do that. I'm going to pass around a worksheet. Each team will get a worksheet. I'd like for you to identify a scribe in the group. We have some pens for you. And for the first part of this workshop, you're only going to focus on the on the front of the sheet. I'd like for you to think about this idea that Christina and James have just presented and talk about what are some pros and what are some cons of this concept, okay? The next thing, I want you to make a list of who are the stakeholders here. Who's involved? Who do we need to get on board? Who are some people that we're going to have to get on our side? And what are some potential barriers? Okay, I just want you to think about the barriers first and make a list. Don't get to the second part of the sheet. We'll get to that afterwards. We're going to have a small conversation and then we'll move on to part 2. Does that sound good? Okay. We're going to pass a mic around very quickly. We have so many people in the room today, and we want to make sure that everyone is heard. So we're going to pass a mic around to each group. Please select one person that's going to speak for your group, and we're going to quickly jot down the pros and cons, just the pros and cons that you've listed. You're going to have to listen, because when we pass the mic to the second group, it's not a time to repeat anything that has already been put on the board. Only new additions. Okay? So only new additions will go up on the board, and then we're going to move to the next question. Is everyone clear on that? Okay, great. And so Christina and I are going to be writing on the flip chart. And so we're going to be taking some notes in the best handwriting possible. So please bear with us, and we will start with Janique.
Thank you. I had to do it because they couldn't read my writing. So for our pros, we're starting with pros, right? We have that this is dignified living situation. So it gives dignity to the people who are there. I'm sorry. The size, resources that are available all in one place. Um, the collaboration that will happen between different organizations, the location, the community effect, having, the oh, I'm sorry. hmm there was one size. I don't think you have that one. Um, location, and then the effect on the community, the positive effect of having less unhoused people on the streets, and that includes, the policing and the EMTs and things like that that will not necessarily have to be engaged. Um, the community within that's going to be built with the people that are living there and will be, having a community with each other. The branding, basically, this is a location that will end up being, probably um, a well-known spot in San Francisco. It'll be, oh, sorry, a well-known spot in San Francisco. So the branding of it, um, I said, oh, keeping the federal funds for San Francisco so that those funds won't be pulled. Sorry, the state funds from Governor Newsom, so those won't be pulled. Tourists, tourists will start returning because I've even spoken to people said I'm not coming back until that's fixed. Tourist, the tourism at San Francisco is normally one of the most visited places in the world, and it's not that anymore. As they'll get more. Businesses will benefit. Businesses will benefit. Families will benefit. The families of the people that are being assisted, and relationships and healing will occur. Um, and then we'll have an injection of people that are entering the workforce that'll be trained. And so that'll be another benefit for taxes because once you work, you pay taxes. And mental health and the ripple effect that causes, where there's the mental health issues that people are dealing with, but there's also the mental health of the people that see people that are homeless and have to um and it's like a selfish thought, but it's it hurts people to see people in that position. And so, and especially if you don't have a solution and you don't have resources for a solution, and so there's a ripple effect there. Our cons are the bureaucratic barriers that will occur, the complaints from the community that will occur, the getting the population that may not want to be in a building and housed to, become housed and become part of this project. So there's going to be people that are going to fight it and not want to be part of it. Um, it doesn't appear to be family ready. So we didn't see anything that looked like it would be ready for whole families to be in together. It just looked like individual pods for individual people. And it was possible safety issues. I can't read my own writing. And that includes well, those are other barriers. I'll talk about those later. Uh, th- and the levels of services needed that need to be like divided up. Like there should be a division of the type of I'm sorry, a division of the type of people that that the not people but the need that they have. And so we don't know if that's being addressed at this time. So and then the how would you enforce rules? in there and keep drugs out and things like that. We didn't write stakeholders. Sorry. Mhm.
All right.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Okay, as we pass the mics around, only add to the list.
Okay. It's cost effective. Already have all the supplies you need. It's legal. It's been done. Different areas for different needs. Big solution to a big problem. It's quick to implement. And we currently have many empty buildings. Heading over to the cons, had to cross off a few. Here we go. Money. The drugs stronghold, how to help with that. This idea of police kind of walking them into this, I'm just trying to imagine that. That's hard. The police helping with this, which would be great. Potential infrastructure like sewage costs, like being a lot more difficult in planning infrastructure. Yeah. This is just my own experience with co-ed shelters that are very hard to manage. That's all, folks.
In the interest of time, I don't want to hold up this process with writing. I'm not going to continue to write anymore on the board. We're just going to continue until we get to the barriers.
All right, so you guys have done a great job already outlining most of the pros and cons that we talked about. The only thing I would add on to the pros is we talked about how with combining all of the wraparound services in one cohesive system and location, there is an organization in the city that already does that, but it's usually only one day every couple of months. So this is great that it is every day. People have access to this. And then with the cons, what we mostly thought about were with the other companies that are surrounding the area. So a lot of these companies are already wanting to acquire this specific building if we're thinking about the X building. And they're also thinking about how will this impact their businesses that are already located there. So we would anticipate a lot of pushback from the companies in the area, and then also just thinking about their employees' personal safety.
Hey, thank you so much. All the pros are already covered, so we can go for cons. Two things that we thought, I can't remember if they were mentioned, is where people will place their belongings. So we know there's storage, but people have so much that's the sanitary concerns and then like logistics for storage. And then the other thing is we see that the best recovery happens when people that were formerly in this environment are able to be leaders. So is there going to be enough people that are willing to move in with those that are being housed that can be cheerleaders for them and advocates for their recovery?
Yeah, I think a lot of the pros have already been covered. I think one of the, maybe it's a pro and a con, I think there's a great benefit to being able to bring in a lot of people at once, sort of a wide top of that funnel. So there, like, you can clean up the streets really fast and get people off the streets really fast, which is great. But the con is that there is sort of naturally a bottleneck at the other end of that process. So you fill the space with 5,000 people, and you've got to get the door out is a lot smaller than the door in. And I feel like we cheated because we had Kathy in our group, so she's brilliant. So I think like there is a bottleneck concern, and then I think also, 5,000 beds sounds like a lot. But you can fill that up pretty quickly and people will keep coming. So you might clean the streets temporarily, but there is a concern that downstream it doesn't have a huge impact.
So we have to help save money for the city as a pro. And then the other pro that we have that I don't think was mentioned is that this is a good timing because there's administration transition coming up. And then in terms of cons, I think one thing that we kept talking about is having people in mind, the actual homeless population before the process, I think is a good way to think about studying how to actually build out the programming and the infrastructure for the actual program. And then we think it's going to, the con is also, it's a pro and a con, but the services needed in terms of psychiatrists and mental health workers, I think you think about the money that you're having to put into this particular project is going to be a lot higher than I think that than we think that you guys have lined up right now. And the other con that I don't think was mentioned was having to do this according to city standards might be a bit difficult if you have to stay within their regulations and their standards.
Okay, all the pros have been covered, at least on our list. Two cons that have not been mentioned specifically: insurance cost, whether you could actually get insurance for this project of this size, and how you, and the cost of it. And the plan at this point hasn't said who's going to live there. If you have 5,000 people, in other words, what supervisors, managers, recovery staff, that kind of thing. There has to be a plan for that in order, we believe, in order to sell it.
So a couple things from the back group that we didn't get to was how to organize the beginnings, the high property taxes for the facility, people reluctant to transition forward. How do you help them along? And then how do you handle bed bugs, fleas, and needed pets?
This is an incredible list. You really brought your minds together to execute on this quite quickly. Thank you so much. The next really important piece here are the barriers. So let's talk about like the big ones. Okay, let's keep it so that we can make our way around the room. Let's share the big barriers, and then we're going to work on some solutions to that. Does that sound good? Okay, I'm going to start back here. Janique, could you start with a few of your barriers?
I'll go with the main ones because I'm the ones that may not be the normal ones because you probably have a lot of them. That the triage selection process. How are we going to decide who comes in? And you have 5,000 spots. The space will eventually run out. So that kind of thing. Right. Well, a barrier to launching the project still would be the funding and the actual the plan that you have to have in place for how this place is going to operate. There's got to be a real, step by step. When they come in, this is what happens, and then when they leave, this is what happens. And there needs to be a real, detailed plan that you can implement and that can be built upon. You might have iterations of it and iterations of it, but we need to, somebody needs to project manage this and get it into a space where each iteration is tested and implemented before you move to the next one. So that's about it for me.
Hi there. So barrier would be neighborhood reaction. Something I'm thinking about right now is also a friend who runs a city homeless ministry, and it seems like statistics bear this out, that if the homeless people are local, that it goes better. So potentially, if just bringing people in from all over the world will actually be more difficult to make it. Like there's more of a buy-in if you're local, you buy into your community. So that's what we had. So how to overcome the barrier, is that what we want or no? Okay.
I'm next. So our barriers mostly go back to what I said for our specific cons. So we were more thinking about how are the other businesses in the area going to react? So are we going to have pushback from the apartment buildings especially? Are we going to have pushback from all the companies who have headquarters in the downtown? And that could potentially come in the form of legal pushback or other people trying to acquire that building. And then the other thing that we thought of as a barrier is once you get people inside of the building, how many people are going to be receptive to the pod style of living versus another type of lifestyle that they're already accustomed to, or, you know, with the situation of families trying to come in, how will that work?
Um, okay, I think one of them is how do we get approval from the people who own these buildings, like Elon Musk? What are some of the strategies for, or why would he be interested? Um, I'm not really familiar with the history of the building and everything right now. Another one is just in terms of some corruption that surrounds homelessness. My dad is a lieutenant firefighter, and so he has been able to observe some of that over the decades. And there was someone who was able to get quite a lot of homeless people directed to the organizations they need to go and off the streets in a year, in addition to his position as a firefighter. And there was multiple organizations with a lot of staff, great funding, that only got 65 or 68 as opposed to 300 and something in a year, and they didn't like that. So when Gavin Newsom was mayor, they went to him and he shut him down. So because of the amount of money that the city makes on homelessness, do we anticipate any bureaucratic tape they might try to throw up to resist this if this is an effective model?
Hi, I wasn't here for the breakout, but I just had a couple things I wanted to throw out from the lens of human trafficking and domestic violence. I'm over here. And so when we talk about a co-ed environment, we have to be cognizant of the kinds of things that might happen in those spaces. So having sex on site, soliciting on site, off site, sharing drugs on site, drug testing, what is the stance going to be on sober living? How's that going to be facilitated? And also 290 sex registrants. So are we going to check that before people come in? Another barrier is some people, so there's a system called HMIS. Are we going to require that people utilize HMIS to get in, because that's part of aligning with the city's entrance procedures, and that's requires a lot of intaking, and it requires verification that people are actually low income, and it requires disclosure and a loss of confidentiality in many instances. So there's some things depending on what kinds of populations you're going to allow in there.
Yeah, I think we had a few more barriers that maybe haven't been touched on yet. I think one of them is, it's hard to see it from here, but I think there's a huge administrative burden, and it's like, are we prepared to handle the huge administrative burden of such a large facility? I think also, again, we already mentioned like the door out is a small one. So is that bottleneck going to be an issue? As like, are the resources currently there to transition people from this huge facility into housing or a supportive program somewhere else? Also, are there enough, like, are there enough addiction counselors, therapists, whatever we need to provide the mental health and medical support that people need in this place? Also, can we secure a facility this large? Thinking about, 4,500 people in various states of crisis. That is a chaotic environment, to be sure. And are we prepared to secure a building that large? I think also somebody touched on it, but can you insure a building that large? Is there even an insurance company that will do it? And then, and there is just like maybe safety is a barrier. Like what happens if there's a fire, violence, guns, things like that, which will be an issue. So can you keep people safe?
I'll just add one last thing to touch upon for the barriers. We have to figure out how to balance all the providers that we would want to invite to come and help us, they're all part of the HMIS coordinated entry system. So all of their funding requires them to provide that kind of service. So we would be operating another system. And so the groups that we think would want to come and help us who have funding may refuse because their funding requires them to do HMIS and coordinated care entry. And so they won't come. Then we have to figure out if that's the case, then how do we fund the wraparound service that we need for each person inside? And I have some data because we've been doing something like this, exactly like this. And our data, it costs about $3,600 a month per person. But if we do it right, 80% of them could exit in 12 months. And 20% would exit closer to 18 months. So you have to calculate $3,600 times 18 months or 24 months. That'll give you a really strong, I think, number.
Most of the arguments were already covered. Maybe a last one that is left behind here is connecting the costs that are already covered and with the data-informed decisions, just like she brought up. Because homeless population is such a range population. We need to partner for something like that to work. We need to partner with governmental data to create few new groups that basically are more successful in an experiment like that. But when you cross the costs that are already established with the lack of data, this brings a lot of risk to the project. So diminish costs or living costs later, but anticipate decisions based on data or informed on data basically increases the chance of success.
Pretty much everything has been mentioned in one form or another, but two that weren't specifically put in the terms that we did in this group is finding enough qualified staff, and the other one is getting all the city permits, getting approvals. That's going to be a tough one.
I think that was it. Nicole, you done writing yet? Come on, step it up.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much for your participation. We have 10 minutes left. And so what I'd like to do with this last 10 minutes is for you just in your groups to choose one of your barriers that you think is the most prominent and just talk about maybe potential solutions and jot some notes down on your worksheet. We'd like to collect these at the end. We're not going to be able to discuss the solutions, but what I think would be really beautiful is if we do a follow-up session. And if you would all be interested in doing a follow-up session that we'll invite you to, we always announce, what's coming up in our Discord channel, and hopefully we'll make sure to get, we have all of you in the community. We'll pick a date for a follow-up session, and we'll really work through some solutions. Does that sound okay? But for now, in your groups, you did this work already. You can take the last few minutes to kind of talk about that one barrier that you think is the most prominent and what a solution might be. And if you don't mind, just jotting it down on your worksheet. And I think we should sign off now. Thank you so much for showing up. It's each and every one of you that does incredible work.
So
I want to give a round of applause to Christina and James.